Now, when I was a kid, everybody I knew had a Swiss Army knife with all these fancy blades, can openers, scissors, things you could commit acts of terrorism with. Not so much nowadays. This bike is like a Swiss Army knife. Well, as we deal with the fall weather and every day gets a little cooler, a little cloudier, fewer leaves around, more of them are on the ground than on the trees, but we're still getting a ride almost every day, and to me, that's job one. And every day out on the open road is a very special thing for me. 42 years, 80,000 miles. I still look forward to getting up in the morning, cleaning this bike up, pre-flighting it, and getting out on the open road. Now, the reason I think it's like a Swiss Army knife, it does so many things well. It really, really can go on a long, comfortable ride. You can chase down sport bikes. You can ride it in the twisties. You can ride it down Route 80 with your hands off the handlebars. It's truly a Swiss Army knife. And I always think it only takes a minute or so in the morning, couple of minutes before I have my coffee, feed the birds, feed the fish, whatever chores have to be done, get flowers for Karen. It only takes a few minutes and I'm riding a nice clean bike, and I've done a little pre-flight, and I know I've got no issues with nails in the tires or anything sneaky like that. Now, luckily, over the years, I've developed a great set of riding gear for riding in cold weather. I have multiple electric jackets, electric gloves, among other things. And I'm coming up on the time of the year when we may be starting to use all of that. But I think today's going to be fine. I'm really looking forward to a crisp fall ride. One more cup of coffee and we'll be headed out to the open road, where all good pumpkins reside. I've had a lot of bikes in my lifetime, and I've had a lot of bikes that I bought and I knew ahead of time they did one thing well. And when I tried to get them to do 2 or 3 things well, it didn't work out exactly as planned. And I've kind of gotten over that. I had some on-road, off-road bikes that didn't do anything well. They weren't good in the dirt, they weren't good on the street. But that's a whole nother thing. This bike was the first bike I ever owned that did a lot of things well. And that's what impressed me about it right away. Like a Swiss Army knife. You could cut a tree down, sharpen a razor blade, you know, shave with it or whatever. It had a lot of dimensions and it did them all well. And it doesn't take long going through the populated areas. You can see the leaves are everywhere. We are right at the end, probably at the very end, of the leaf in the road season. Now, I have owned some bikes in my time that were great if you just rode on a perfectly smooth road, and they were fast enough and they handled well enough and everything. But the one thing they didn't do is handle these back roads that are bumpy and slippery. They just didn't handle it well. Now, what I thought when I originally got this bike, I thought, oh great, this is a good bike for the main highways and whatnot. And as soon as I started riding it on the back roads where it was a little bumpy, I said, well, that suspension is halfway decent anyway. It's not like it's a track bike, but it has a good enough set of suspension you can ride the bumpy roads. of the two-strokes that I've owned, they were great on the back roads. They did everything well, except they were so peaky, they were not really fun to ride. This bike has the kind of a power band that no matter what road you're riding on, the power band allows you to have a really good time. And having a 200-mile range is so convenient when you're out on the open road, or if you're on these back roads where there aren't a lot of gas stations around. And it's lucky for us that we have not had the roads salted yet. Once they do salt these roads up north here, they are a mess for the whole months to come. A real mess. And this was the first bike I ever owned that made multi-day trips just practical. Fun is not even the right word. Just practical. You didn't come home feeling like you were in prison. Now, of course, all beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I happen to think this is a beautiful motorcycle, one of the most beautiful ones anyway that I've ever owned. And of course, that's all in the eye of the beholder. But what it does for me that I think is important, every time I stand back and take some pictures, or if I'm in the garage just oogling the bikes or hanging out with friends or at a bike meetup, I love the design of the bike, the styling, the color, the engine is even attractive. Every part of this, it's a package. It doesn't look like a Mr. Potato Head bike that somebody just put a lot of plastic on and a lot of flat black. I like this bike. Now, I almost never think of it, but I know right from the get-go, I appreciated the way the transmission shifts. It's smooth shifting, light, smooth shifting. Not all the bikes I've ever owned shift light and smooth. This one does. Now, I use riding a motorcycle for my daily exercise. I do try to ride every day, almost every day. And this bike, when I get off the bike after 3 hours, I don't have the feeling I've been mugged. Not all the bikes I've ever owned give you that feeling. I've had some bikes that did everything well, except at the end of a ride, you were exhausted, your back hurt, your wrists hurt. Some of the bikes that had clip-ons were just ergonomically not good for me when I was, and it wouldn't be even better. They're worse for me now at this age. When I was young, they weren't even good for me. This bike somehow checks all the boxes, and that's hard to do. I always say it's easy to design a one-purpose motorcycle, harder to design a Swiss Army knife. This bike is like a Swiss Army knife. And I constantly look for things that I think it could do better, and I'm always almost at a loss. And I get back from every ride, at the end of the day, I have my coffee, and I look at the bike in the driveway, and I just think, it's a Swiss Army knife. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please hit the like button if you did, and thank you so much for watching.